How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Keep It Kayfabe podcast. This is our 5th show here today. We have a lot of news to talk about. We're here with our co-host, Matt. We have some MMA news, some pro wrestling news, and some drug testing news, so let's get into it. We're going to start here today with Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar was flagged for a possible violation prior to UFC 200 on a drug test conducted on June 28th. USADA now runs all UFC testing. They are higher than Olympic level testing, and this test came back positive. The substance is not yet revealed, similar to the Jon Jones case. There are rumors going around today, though, that Brock Lesnar tested positive for an asthma inhaler. So if that is the case, he's not off the hook or anything, because he would have still had to disclose this on his USADA pre-fight drug questionnaire. And it's already sketchy because he got the 4-month exemption for re-signing with the UFC. He was treated as a new signee rather than a fighter coming out of retirement, like we mentioned before. So he's not out of the woods yet. He's probably... It's actually not as bad as if he would have straight up failed for a PED or a estrogen blocker like Jon Jones did, because those indicate steroids and PED use. And, well, albuterol and all those things are still banned substances. They're not that high of an offense. So it's probably going to be knocked down to a 6-month suspension, but he will still be heavily fined. He will probably lose a good chunk of his UFC 200 purse. If he is banned for any amount of time, any state that has an athletic commission that regulates pro wrestling, Lesnar would not be able to compete in those states. Now, the WWE has never really had that type of a conflict where a performer's been suspended and not allowed to compete, in somewhere that an athletic commission regulates the sport, but that could happen. And with SummerSlam coming in New York, Lesnar is scheduled to face Randy Orton, so he might not be able to do that. And
no.
Even if WWE suspends him as part of their drug testing policy, he's only out for a maximum of 30 days.
Yeah.
So if he's out for 30 days, he can still compete in SummerSlam. It doesn't really affect that, but if he's out for 6 months and an athletic commission suspends him, because USADA can suspend him and he won't be out of... If USADA suspends him, that only really affects his UFC schedule. And he might not have fought again anyway. That's still up in the air. So if USADA suspends him for any length of time, he will get a really heavy fine, probably multiple millions of dollars. Mark Hunt has actually requested that he gets 100% of Lesnar's purse, or he said he will leave the UFC or request for his release. So, yeah, now that it's most likely an asthma inhaler, I think he's going to be suspended for 6 months, and he won't be able to fight or anything for those 6 months. He should be good to go for SummerSlam, because I don't know though, because like I said, if the athletic commission does suspend him,
Do you think they may try to get around it by giving him a 30-day, put him on give him a 30-day violation? You think they may try and use that as a kind of way to say that they punished him, he suffered for this, but these are our rules of our company, and he paid the violation, and now he try and use that to try and get an athletic commission to try and
The problem is the UFC has to adhere to USADA testing and USADA regulations. So if USADA decides to suspend him for 3 years or a year and a half or 6 months, he's going to be out of the UFC for that amount of time.
Yeah.
If an athletic commission suspends him and they suspend him for 6 months, then that's really just all athletic commissions in the United States.
Yeah.
So USADA is only the UFC. The athletic commissions can stop him from competing in MMA and pro wrestling in those states. Now, he can wrestle any other state that's not regulated. Like
Well, yeah.
New York's regulated. I think Connecticut's regulated. There's a few.
Yeah.
Maybe not Connecticut. I might just be talking out my ass here, but there's about 18 states that regulate it. So that puts WWE in a position now where they just lost their SummerSlam main event potentially. They have to address the story. The UFC still has to deal with the fallout because Jon Jones failed. He took a test on June 16th, and his drug test came back a few days before UFC 200, and they pulled him. They wouldn't let him fight.
Yeah.
Lesnar, all these drug tests too, they're like really expensive, but they should still be back within like 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
So by all accounts, they should have fucking known that Lesnar was going to fail before UFC 200. Now, obviously, that would have cost them millions and millions of dollars, so they probably pulled a power move there and didn't pull him from the card. But this is just crazy because no matter what, they let a fighter fight that failed a test. If they didn't know about it before, that's one thing. But they already gave him that 4-month exemption.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make anybody look good. Nobody looks good in this situation. Mark Hunt looks worse because he took a loss and he took a beating.
He did take a beating.
The UFC looks bad because they pulled out Jones for this same thing. You know, not the same substance, but same violation.
Yeah.
The WWE put their neck on the line to promote Lesnar for SummerSlam or promote Lesnar for UFC 200. They held off for a really long time, and then they finally did it. They promoted it after his win.
Yes, they did.
And they embraced it as a legit sport. They put their guy super over, and they don't look good from this. They might have just lost their main event.
I feel like...
And the UFC heavyweight rankings now just lost 2 potential top 10 fighters.
Yeah.
I mean, because while Mark Hunt can still fight, he's requesting his release from the UFC unless he's compensated for putting his health at risk.
And Lesnar obviously took a big purse from UFC 200. That's going to be a big payday for Mark Hunt if they do end up trying to keep him on the roster.
Yep, Lesnar's payday was $2.5 million disclosed. His management has said that he will probably get $6 million in pay-per-view points and sponsorship revenue. He only was paid $5,000 from the Reebok sponsorship, but you know that doesn't really matter. It's Brock Lesnar. He made a bunch of money anyway. He had his own press conference after UFC 200. So,
but to be honest, I feel like WWE is going to try and distance themselves from this as much as possible, try and address it as little as possible because they've had like there was obviously the Roman Reigns situation recently where he had a drug test violation, yet he's still in a main event for the title at Battleground. So I feel like if they don't have issues with an athletic commission like you were discussing before, then they're just going to try and distance themselves from it as much as they can. You know, if they are questioned about it, obviously they aren't just going to ignore it, but I feel like they're going to try and take as much focus off of that as they can to try and still keep Brock's image intact as much as they can coming into SummerSlam.
That's true, and depending on what happens the next few days, like, it just really puts them in a hole too because, if they would have stuck their head in the sand for the Roman Reigns situation, they wouldn't have to deal with this. Yeah. But since they did deal with that and didn't sweep it under the rug and all that, and also, like I said earlier, we were at lunch today and we were talking about Billy Gunn was a trainer for WWE Developmental this last year, and he failed. He was in a bodybuilding competition, and he failed a drug test. And normally, when talent fails a drug test, they're only suspended for 30 days on their first offense, 60 days on their second offense, 60 to 90 days on their second offense, depending on what it is. And on their third offense, that's it. They're done from the company. They're gone. Well, in this case, this was Billy Gunn's first offense under the new WWE's new drug testing policy, and they fired him. It's probably because he's a trainer, but there is precedent there to fire him. Not that they're going to fire Brock Lesnar over something, you know what I mean, like this, especially when the Roman Reigns things happen.
Yeah.
But it just still doesn't make them look good in any way.
The one thing that does look a little more favorably from them is the fact that he hasn't been with them really since WrestleMania. WrestleMania is the last thing he really did.
That's true, but he's also on the cover of their new video game.
He is on the cover. He's obviously, his face is all over WWE programming.
They're going to promote that heavily this summer, too.
Yeah,
heavily.
Of course.
They have to. I think it comes out in October, maybe October, November.
It's scheduled to come out in October, and they might.
So you're going to be seeing his face all over.
But they might change the directions of the commercials. Obviously, he's on the cover, but they might change the direction of the commercials and try to focus more. Maybe get Goldberg back to do another couple spots or something like that. Because Brock Lesnar being a face of anything right now is obviously questionable. But with him not competing at least with them since WrestleMania, I think that at least gives them a little bit of distance, which looks a little better on their part.
So speaking of MMA bans, Jon Jones will likely face a 2-year ban under USADA rules for 2 drug test failures. It was the same test, and he failed for 2 separate estrogen blockers. Now, of course, nothing's official, but that's what Chael Sonnen said on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. And since Jones's management hasn't denied that, we're going to assume that's true. Tomorrow, I think we're going to have the Cruiserweight Classic coverage. We still have to watch the first 2 episodes, so we'll let you know how that is and how we feel about that. So this weekend, with everything going on, it was easy to miss it. The UFC crowned their first openly gay champion. Amanda Nunes defeated Miesha Tate by submission in the first round in the main event of UFC 200 to become the first openly gay champion. She is expected to face Ronda Rousey in her return fight because Dana White said Ronda could get the immediate title shot when she returns. And originally it was thought that Holly Holm or Miesha Tate would be the champion, but anything can happen nowadays in MMA. Anyone can fail a drug test. Any underdog can win. Michael Bisping is the champion.
Michael Bisping beat Luke Rockhold for the championship.
Also, Eddie Alvarez this weekend beat Rafael dos Anjos for the 155 title. How crazy is that?
That was a crazy fight. It was a really good fight. I was supporting Eddie all the way, and I'm glad he got the win.
So, with that was the end of the Brazilian era of champions until the next 2 days later, Amanda Nunes became a Brazilian champion again. Shinsuke Nakamura and Finn Balor had a standout match in NXT this week. What do you think, Matt? How was it?
I thought it was a great match. I thought the match was amazing. I was really surprised that they actually decided to use the whole hour-long NXT for just that one match. I expected there to be at least 1 or 2 other matches. There was the Samoa Joe Rhino Championship segment at the beginning, which woohoo, I guess. But Finn Balor and Nakamura, it was a really well performed match. I thought it was paced really well. I wasn't bored throughout the whole thing. I was entertained. And, I obviously expected Nakamura to come out on top because there haven't been quite as many rumblings about him going up immediately as there have with Finn Balor, where he's been backstage. People have been waiting for him to be called up to the main roster for months now, and he's just kind of in NXT until he feels like not being in NXT anymore. So I kind of expected Nakamura to come out with the win for that reason, because it looks like Nakamura may have another run or 2 in NXT, another feud or 2, maybe take Joe for the championship or something like that. But overall, it was an amazing match. I thought
they had Finn Balor kick out of Nakamura's finisher. Do you think that was the wrong move here? Do you think it was special enough? It wasn't even a title match. That's the problem I have with it.
It wasn't a title match, but the way they framed it, they made it almost as important as a title match with that first Nakamura promo where he come out. He called Finn Balor the NXT icon, you're the hero of NXT, all these things. And Finn Balor kicking out of his finisher, I believe he kicked out of an inverted version of the finisher. and when he hit the Shinsaka or
It could be.
whatever it's
I
called.
haven't seen over like 10 Nakamura matches.
Yeah.
But I've seen him hit that move from the front and the back. The knee to the back of the head.
Yeah.
That running knee to the back of the head.
But it looked like, when he kicked out of it, it did hit him in the back. And then when Nakamura did hit him, like, directly head on in the face with it, he did get the pin. But, I mean...
He ate a standing stomp to the face, too. Nakamura did from Finn
Nakamura
Balor.
ate a standing
that
stomp
looked
to the face,
beautiful.
and he ate that other finisher move that Finn Balor
Coup de
used.
grace? Or...
The stand, it was a... He inverted it. I can't remember the name of it. He lifted him up and pile drivered him almost. He had him up like that and kind of pile drivered him off to the side. It was some kind of finisher. Michael Cole made a big deal out of it. People probably know what it is. I can't think of the name of the move right now, but he did, and it was an inverted version of that because Michael Cole made sure to say, "Oh, it's an inverted whatever."
When you
it's
say
called.
Michael Cole, you mean Corey Graves or
I do mean Corey
other
Graves
announcer,
or Tom, whatever his last name is.
So this week, we had our commissioners announced for Raw and SmackDown.
We did.
Stephanie is going to run Raw, and Shane is going to run SmackDown. And next week, they have to announce their GMs for the show.
So it looks like, they're not going to be actually running the operations as much. They're going to have, those general managers to run the operations.
But apparently, I was listening to Wrestling Observer, and they're not even going to have the GMs make the picks. They're going to have the commissioners make the picks.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that.
That's like a Dallas Cowboys move where the owner makes the picks instead of the people.
But I feel like the GM is going to be there, and they'll kind of have little segments of them discussing with the GM who they think is going to be good on the roster.
Do you have any guesses for the GM?
I mean,
Eric Bischoff or SmackDown?
It looks promising that Eric Bischoff is going to come back to either SmackDown or Raw. I would assume he would go to SmackDown with them trying to build that, them trying to create something a bit different with the SmackDown brand. I think Eric Bischoff would be a good way for them to kind of deviate from the status quo of what's going on if you give Eric Bischoff a little bit of freedom over there.
Now, Eric Bischoff did deny this on Twitter, but keep in mind, he's a master of kayfabe, no pun intended, and he is really good at working the crowd. That's what he does.
Yeah, and they're obviously not going to want him to reveal that he's involved in anything, so any things that he posts obviously are taken with a grain of salt, because even if he is working in a deal with them, they're obviously he's gonna have confidentiality agreements and whatnot to where he can't share that kind of information.
So on Monday we have the GMs being announced. On Tuesday we have the live draft on SmackDown. It's going to determine where superstars are for the next probably year or so. There's only going to be 4 or 5 interpromotional pay-per-views
I believe
through
so,
the year.
Yeah.
So each brand is going to have their own monthly pay-per-view. It didn't work 10 years ago. It didn't work 15 years ago. Probably isn't going to work now, but we'll see, since no one actually pays for the pay-per-views. They're all on the network, so it's not really...
So they may be able to get a little more from that because of the fact that, it's not paying for two $60 pay-per-views every month. It's just paying for the network and being able to watch these two pay-per-views where these supposedly grander matches take place.
We had John Lineker knock out Michael McDonald in his return, and he completely starched him. What do you have to say about that? That was on UFC Sioux Falls. That was the main event of the show. What do you have to say about his TKO win against McDonald?
I mean, it was a great win. I was really entertained by the fight. I mean, I was a bit disappointed because I'm a Michael McDonald guy myself, and he obviously did not do too well in that fight. He got hurt quick and then just never necessarily recovered from it and ended up getting TKO'd, obviously. But overall, I thought it was a really entertaining fight. I thought John Lineker looked really good. It was just disappointing to see that Michael McDonald didn't necessarily get in much of an offense at all.
If you're listening to this and you don't really watch MMA and you don't know who John Lineker is, every time he fights, go out of the way to watch it. John Lineker backs his opponents up against the cage and just swings like a madman. And if he can't get it done, he'll just keep doing it. He'll keep stalking people down. He has heavy hands.
Those hands of stone.
He's a monster. Tony Ferguson was also in the co-main event. Go out of your way to watch that. I'm not going to reveal any spoilers about that, but it's a real treat, so go out of your way to catch Tony Ferguson on the UFC Sioux Falls card as well. Here we're also going to talk about Ronda Rousey's coach, Edmund Tarverdian. He is a joke. So Ronda Rousey, arguably the most successful fighter in the last 10 years because she came from pretty much nothing, changed the face of MMA, got women's MMA into the UFC, main evented big cards, that type of thing. Her coach is awful.
Yeah.
So of all the fighters that have gone to their gym, so after Ronda had her success, a bunch of fighters went to his gym to train. And what do you think their record is since they've gone to Edmund Tarverdyan's gym? What do you think their record is combined?
Well, I think I know. I think I know what their record is because I think I heard you say it earlier.
It's 5-18.
That's what I thought.
5-18. They had killers. They had Travis Brown, who was a killer. He trained at Greg Jackson's. He knocked out Alistair Overeem. You're telling me a man who knocked out Alistair Overeem gets steamrolled in his last 3 or 4 fights?
Over and over. Yeah.
He has 1 win in that span. And this just keeps happening. It's like the Black Zillions. People just kept going there, and then they just keep dumping money into it and losing. And it just doesn't work for anybody. It's like LOL. So hopefully Ronda comes back soon. Otherwise, his career is probably over. The UFC was sold last week for $4 billion. We reported that last month, but they tried to keep that under wraps. But it's out now. And like we said, we'll have the Cruiserweight Classic coverage probably coming up tomorrow.
We did also have this week on Raw. We had a Battle Royal to start out Raw.
Darren Young is great again.
We determined the Intercontinental title contender for the Miz's Intercontinental Championship. He was there ringside to watch. This Battle Royal, it was pretty laid out that there was a few people who had a chance to win. Darren Young was in the ring for the first time since he's been doing his Make Darren Young Great Again promos with Bob Backlund at ringside, obviously. Then we had Apollo Crews, Baron Corbin, Dolph Ziggler, and there may have been one other person, and then the rest of the Battle Royal was all tag team contenders. We know that neither of the Dudley Boys, neither of the Usos, neither of the Ascension are going to get shots for the Intercontinental title. There's no reason for
I thought
them
this was way too soon to pull the trigger on this angle because they haven't had them on TV for the 3 or 4 months they've been doing these promos, and then to have them just come out and win, I think it's just too soon. They could have got.
But I think they may go in the direction of he doesn't necessarily win, because if you do watch the Battle Royal, Darren Young didn't necessarily... He won because Apollo Crews and Baron Corbin both eliminated each other at the same time, and the two of them and Darren Young were the last 3 competitors in the ring, so the two of them eliminated each other. Darren Young was left by himself. So I think they may be going down the road of he kind of lucks into wins. He's not really trying to win, but he just happens to win, kind of.
Do you see a heel turn in the immediate future after he gets over?
Not in the immediate future. I feel like they're gonna go in that direction where he lucks into it, or he thinks he lucks into it because Bob Backlund does something, or something to that degree, and so I think if that gets a good enough reaction, they'll try and draw that out for as long as they can. Plus I don't know that he would necessarily be as successful as a heel, though. I can't necessarily ever remember seeing him too strongly as a heel, but he kind of has the face and the personality of somebody who...
He has the face of John Cena, man.
He has the face of John Cena, I know that, but he kind of has his personality kind of screams it's almost like a Biggie without the toughness factor.
Yeah.
He just seems like a fun-loving, happy guy. He doesn't seem like somebody who would necessarily do too well in a heel role unless it was a gimmicky, goofy heel role, kind of like a Santino heel role.
We also have here Michael Bisping is going to fight Dan Henderson for the middleweight title What do you think of that for Dan Henderson's retirement fight? And do you think if he loses, he's actually going to retire, or do you think he's just going to keep coming back for that big paycheck if he knocks out Bisping again like he did at UFC 100?
I think he'll probably, if he's got people he still wants to fight, and again, yeah, obviously the paychecks are going to be fairly big if he doesn't, if he ends up knocking out Michael Bisping, and yeah, I don't necessarily think he'll actually retire if he wins. If he's still got people who he feels like are worth fighting, and if the paydays are good enough, then I don't see any reason why he wouldn't keep coming back.
Jacare is pissed that they skipped him because they promised him. Who did he just fight?
I can't remember.
Vitor.
Oh, yes.
Wasn't it Vitor?
I think so.
And they promised him that whoever won that fight was going to get a title shot.
Yeah.
And he just walked through him, and then they didn't give him a title shot. Right? Isn't that who it was?
I think so.
Yep, that was Vitor at UFC 198. So they're stubbing Jacare on the snubbing him for the title shot, not something that they're...
Other than the fight immediately before that, he lost to Yoel Romero by split decisions. But other than
that was overturned, though, because Yoel popped.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so they don't count that against him.
So other than that, yeah, he's been on a winning record since he lost back to Luke Rockhold in Strikeforce.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're going to give him the title. So, anything else we have here to talk about? I think we almost covered everything.
There was a couple more things on Raw. We talked about the Intercontinental title. The U.S. title, it looks like Zack Ryder maybe getting a U.S. title shot.
Don't even want to talk about it. Even want to talk about it. We already know how that goes.
He's been having a kind of mini feud with Sheamus, I guess. He had a match with Sheamus on Raw.
Charlotte just keeps losing her heat week by week.
That's true.
Afterthought now.
But yeah, Zack Ryder, before his match with Sheamus, he approached Rusev and he said, you know, I challenge you for a U.S. title match. Rusev kind of he got attacked from behind by Sheamus. They went out, they had their match. Sheamus won, and then Rusev came out, put the accolade on him. But as he put the accolade on him, he screamed, I accept your challenge," over and over again. So I don't know if they're doing a U.S. title match for Zack Ryder on Raw against Rusev, which I can't necessarily see him winning, but that may be something for the U.S. title. Yeah, Charlotte continuing to lose heat. Dana Brooke, I don't necessarily think anybody cares too much about her. And Sasha also seems to be having a weird momentum around her.
She's a tweener right now. I don't think she's clear cut either way. I don't think the fans... When she used to say, who's the baddest, the fans used to pop really loud.
It seems like she's not trying to be a tweener, but like she's trying to be a face and coming off as a tweener.
She reminds me of when Lita came back from injury like 10, 12 years ago. She just never had that same momentum, but she was always great.
Yeah.
She might, you know what I mean? I think she could reach it again, but she has to find...
strange, and I hope she reaches it again because Sasha never really had a lot of momentum being on the main roster, obviously. She had her time in NXT, but...
Yeah,
and then,
it peaked at Mania. She got hurt after that, and then it kind of... Same thing with Wyatt. I mean...
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of the Wyatts, the compound.
They did have the big compound battle.
If you're listening to this and you haven't seen the Wyatt compound fight against the New Day, just Google it right now, YouTube it, watch it, and then come back right now to listen right back to where you were. It is great, but it is awful.
It is. It's one of those things where it's in the process of what's going on. You're watching it and it's cringeworthy what's going on the screen almost. But then once you get past some of the intro stuff and whatnot, some of the little tossing lines back and forth, some of it actually was really great, like you said. Also interesting, when the New Day first arrived on the Wyatt compound,
there was a woman there.
There was a woman in a sheep's
But yeah, I think they did that to get that out of the way so people wouldn't speculate the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think if anything, she might have been a developmental wrestler. I don't think she was like a legit.
Well, no, but I'm just saying that obviously keeps pushing the theories of Sister Abigail eventually becoming an actual person, being a part of the Wyatt family. It just pushes those theories forward, kind of. Who else would this woman be that's on the Wyatt compound wearing one of the Wyatt sheep masks, you know?
So that's it for our show today.
Than that, that's not it.
That is
because, Seth Rollins had the Rollins Report, his new talk show that he convinced Stephanie to give him on Raw this week. And I didn't necessarily see this segment, but from it arose the fact that Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose will be having a WWE title match in the main event on Raw this week. So
that's it? That's our show?
So I think that's it. But yeah, Rollins will be facing Ambrose one-on-one on Raw for the title this week, on the 18th, the day before the draft. Don't imagine they would take the title off Ambrose at this point because it wouldn't really make sense. He hasn't had it that long, and it seems like I would speculate him as the winner at Battleground as well. But you never know what WWE plans to do. You never know what their plans are for the WWE Championship. So now I think that we are done.
All right. So that's it for today. Like we said, we got the Cruiserweight Classic review coming up later, probably tomorrow. Bellator 158 in London is taking place tonight, so we're going to have a recap of that. Thanks for listening. Give us a like and a sub. Anything else you want to say, Matt?
Nope, yeah, just thanks for listening. Again, if you have anything you want us to talk about, you want us to address in these podcasts, let us know. Let me or Jesse know. And yeah, thanks for listening. Keep listening if you like what you hear. Like, share, comment.
Thank you very much, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.